And we are back. Welcome to my third and final European video of the week. This is my Europa Conference League preview and predictions ahead of the round of 16 second legs. Don't forget, if you missed either my Champions League video or my Europa League video previewing the matches taking place tonight and tomorrow, you can check both of those videos out at the top of your screen right now. And don't forget that if you do enjoy all of my predictions videos, to drop a like on this video. And if you are new around here, please do consider subscribing with notifications turned on. We have one more Premier League preview and prediction video to come for you on Friday before we head off to the international break, where we will be covering the Nations League semi-finals and the first World Cup qualifiers. So plenty to ingest over the course of the next few weeks, even though club football will be taking a 2-week break. But as for today, we'll be rounding off our European preview and predictions with this Conference League video. So let's look ahead to the 8 matches taking place, where you will see that after last week, we managed to get ourselves up to 68 out of 124. Sadly, again, only 3 out of 8 in the Conference League. But as with every competition last week, we did manage to get a correct score. That was the Copenhagen versus Chelsea game, which means we're up to 7 correct scores in the Conference League so far. But without any further ado, let's get into it. As always, as you all know, 4 early kickoffs and 4 late kickoffs. So let's do this in alphabetical order once again, which means that the first game we will be covering today is Cercle Brugge taking on Jagiellonia Bialystok. And on the first leg, it was actually fairly even. You might look at that 3-0 scoreline to Jagiellonia and think, well, surely they won this pretty comfortably. But actually, the game was very even in the first leg. And that was up until Francis picked up a stupid second yellow card. Again, I've seen a few red cards this week, and they just poor decision-making from the players, and this was yet another one of those. Second yellow card for them, and from that point onwards, it then did become all Jagiellonia, with that man again, now the outright Europa Conference League top scorer, Palulu, scoring firstly a penalty, then an unbelievable overhead kick for the third goal for Jagiellonia, which means they take this 3-goal lead into Belgium. To be honest, it didn't then get much better for Cercle at the weekend, who then lost in the Bruges derby to Club Bruges 3-1 at home. And what's worse for them is it didn't actually make many changes to that starting lineup. A lot of the times this week, we've spoken about teams making changes ahead of their second leg. Cercle have still played pretty much their full first team and lost once again. For JB, they won 1-0 away. They changed more than half of their team for that one. And I just think coming into this second leg, it's too much to ask for Cercle to turn this around. Do I think they're capable of doing it? Absolutely. We said about it in the first leg, this is the closest tie of any of the ties across all 3 competitions. Literally, the side that finished 8th against the side that finished 9th. But with a 3-goal deficit to overturn, I just think it's going to be too much for them. I would certainly have Cercle as favourites to win this leg. But regardless, I don't think it's going to matter in the context of the tie. In terms of the teams themselves, as we know, Francis is going to be suspended following the red card in the first leg. Meanwhile, JB are expected to be without Wozuzek. I can't say his name properly, but he went off injured in the first leg, and it looks like he will not be making the second leg. For me, this is either going to be a draw on the night or a Cercle win. So I am going to give the Belgians the benefit of the doubt for how well they were playing until that red card. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 win to Cercle on the night. But ultimately, it's going to be Jagiellonia that make it into the quarter-finals. Next up, it is Djurgardens taking on Pafos. And you've got to say it, it's another great performance from Pafos, who are having a very good tournament in my opinion. They take a 1-goal lead back to Sweden, thanks to a goal from Tankovic, who very nearly added a second goal just 60 seconds after his first one. A bizarre incident where the goalkeeper's down, Tankovic scores a cross, whether it was a cross or a shot, we don't really know, but it was a brilliant finish in the far corner. And then the referee's whistle blows, and you're like, no way is he giving it for the keeper being on the floor. But it turns out that Tankovic was actually offside from an initial shot that then rotated him all the way around the outside. Absolutely bizarre goal. It took me 3 attempts to figure out what had actually happened. But it still means that Pafos take this 1-goal lead. And to be fair, Djurgardens really did struggle in that first leg. They had less possession. They created a lot fewer chances than their hosts. But it has to be noted that going back to their home ground, they have to be considered strong favourites. They're only 1 goal behind, and they've got the advantage of that artificial pitch, which Pafos are not going to be used to. It's also worth noting that at the weekend, that Pafos drew 0-0 domestically, which is a poor performance from them, and they did play the majority of their usual players. Djurgardens also had the weekend off, so they're going to be completely fresh coming into this. They are going to have one player missing. Danielson is suspended for this match, and Pafos are going to be without Goldar, who went off injured in the first leg, and it's expected to not make this second leg. Ultimately, the question is, can Djurgardens hold Pafos out? Because in the 4 matches that Pafos have played away from home this season, they've actually managed to score 9 goals, scoring in every single one of their away games. So the real pressure is, can Djurgardens actually outscore Pafos in this second leg? Like I said, in my opinion, they should be considered the favourites to take this second leg, given the fact that they are home, they finished higher in the league table, and they've got that artificial pitch. But I just think that Pafos are going to have enough to force this through. Do I think this could go to extra time penalties? Absolutely. But the Cypriot side have proven themselves time and time again in this tournament so far. So I'm going to just give them the benefit of the doubt and go for a 2-2 draw on the night, which will see Pafos go 3-2 on aggregate. On to the third game, and we move over to Switzerland, where Celje are going to be wondering where the hell was this form during the league phase, because they finished 21st and barely made it in to the playoffs in the first place. But since then, they've been absolutely flying in this competition, and they did it yet again against Lugano in the first leg of this one. And it was a really good goal as well. Brilliant cross from the right-hand side, good movement from the inside, from outside to in, great header into the far corner, and also, it probably could have been more coming out at the end of that first leg. And I think Celje are going to be a little bit disappointed that they've not taken a bigger lead to Switzerland for this second leg. Not only that, but Papadopoulos was sent off for a literal forearm to the face of one of the Celje players for Lugano. So that automatically means he is going to be missing for this second leg. And over the weekend, it didn't get any better for Lugano either, because once again they lost. To be fair, they did change the majority of their team with this second leg in mind, but because they lost at the weekend, they have now lost their last 5 matches in a row, which really doesn't suggest that they're going to do much in this second leg either. Celje, on the other hand, they managed to draw 2-2 at home, but again, they changed the majority of their starting lineup with this second leg in mind, should I say. In terms of the actual teams themselves, as we've mentioned, Papadopoulos obviously going to be suspended for Lugano following his red card, but he is not the only person who is going to be missing for Celje. Nemanic is going to be missing for them. He picked up his 3rd yellow card of the tournament in the first leg, so he is also going to be suspended. For me, from what I've seen of these two sides over the last few weeks, with how well Celje have played in the playoffs and in the first leg, with how drastically poor Lugano have been over the course of the last 3 weeks, I can't sit here and say that Lugano are going to go through. I really can't. Again, if you look at it on paper, in terms of the actual players and how well they did in the league phase, Lugano absolutely should be considered the favourites for this match. But personally, I don't think I can give it to them. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw, which will see Celje go through 2-1 on aggregate. As for the final early kickoff, it is, of course, Rapid taking on Borac. And, well, it's just same old Borac, isn't it? You think you have them beat, but they always find a way to pull off a result. And this time, it was a 90th minute penalty. And, look, I know we've talked about controversial penalties on this channel a few times, but for me, this is probably the most controversial of the lot. Don't get me wrong. The Rapid defender has their arm up, but it deflects up off their leg. And to my understanding of the rules, if the ball deflects up off a leg onto an arm, handball should not be given. But this is a UEFA competition. We've seen it time and time again. So I understand why the penalty was given, but personally, I don't agree with it. But that last-minute penalty means that Borac do take a 1-1 draw heading into Austria here. But it should not be overlooked that Rapid absolutely dominated that first leg. And if it wasn't for some really poor finishing, they would be taking more than a 1-1 draw back to Austria in this game. Also, when I watched the highlights, there was this sort of weird moment at full time where the Borac players were sort of like applauding their fans like you do at the end of the match, but it didn't feel like a, come on, we're going on to the second leg. It looked a bit more like, that was everything we had. We don't think we're going to win this second leg. So this is probably the last time we're going to be doing this in Europe. But I don't know. Borac fans, if you are watching, let me know down in the comment section. What could and most definitely should be noted is that at the weekend, Rapid lost for their 3rd domestic game in their last 4. So they're not actually on the best run of form themselves at the moment, and they do have a couple of injury concerns coming into this one as well. As for Borac, they drew 1-1, playing basically the exact same team that played in the first leg. So, again, they're not exactly going to be full of confidence. Neither of these teams are going to be full of confidence. Rapid, 3 defeats in 4. Borac, a couple of 1-1 draws coming into this. But I just think with Rapid being at home, with how good they played in the league phase, they were unbeaten at home in the league phase, I just think they're going to be far too good for Borac. And I think the dream for Borac is going to end in this second leg. In my opinion, it's foolish not to back Rapid Vienna for this second leg. I'm going to be generous. I'm just going to go for 2-0. But ultimately, I think if Rapid played to their full potential, this could end up being way more than 2-0. But we shall see. Borac have proven themselves time and time again over the last few weeks. Do they have another big performance in them? We shall see. On to the later kickoffs, and the first one of those is Chelsea taking on Copenhagen. As we mentioned at the start of the video, the one prediction I got absolutely spot on last week. Although, correct me if I'm wrong, but did both teams play incredibly weakened sides in that first leg? Obviously, as an English football fan, I know Chelsea made wholesale changes to their usual starting lineup. But when I looked at the Copenhagen lineup, there were a lot of players in there that I'm pretty sure don't usually play for Copenhagen either. So I don't quite understand that. Again, if I'm wrong, Copenhagen fans, please do correct me in the comment section. But there were certainly some players from that starting lineup that I was surprised that weren't playing. Ultimately, Chelsea ended up being 2-1 winners. They took a 2-goal lead through Reece James and Enzo Fernandez, but were pulled back by, I can picture him but I can't say his name, Carlson or something. But they brought it to 2-1 coming into this second leg. But it's too much, surely, for Copenhagen. Look, to be fair to them, they turned around the Heidenheim game in the playoffs, but you're now travelling to the team that won the Conference League phase, have basically won every single game in this competition so far. Chelsea made it 3 wins in a row at the weekend in the Premier League. Okay, it was only a 1-0 win over Leicester. Cole Palmer missed the penalty. But, bizarrely, left-back Cucurella contributed for his 3rd game in a row, getting goals in his last 2 Premier League games and getting an assist in the Conference League game last week. Meanwhile, Copenhagen only managed yet another draw with basically, it's somewhat a changed side. They changed some of their players. I don't really understand the Copenhagen lineup at the moment. I think I've made it pretty clear through that prediction, through this preview so far. But that draw at the weekend means that Michelin have actually now gone above Copenhagen in the Danish league as well. So they're not having a good time of things at the moment, are Copenhagen. All I can say in regards to the starting lineups when it comes to this game is that once again, Chelsea are going to be without any of their regular strikers, Jackson, Gui, etc. So either it's going to have to be 17-year-old Mueke up front again, or it's going to be a Pedro Neto or an Nkunku, one of their sort of winger cam type players playing in the forward lines. For Copenhagen, they could have some of their usual regular players back. The likes of Falk and Robert both came off the bench at the weekend. El Yanusi looks like he's coming back as well. But Marcos Lopez is suspended for them following his yellow card in the first leg. Ultimately, it's Chelsea's game to lose. I can ramble on and on as much as you want about this fixture, but I'd be absolutely shocked if Copenhagen go to Stamford Bridge and get the result here. I'm going for a 3-1 win to Chelsea. Finally then, we have 3 games that were absolute chaos in the first legs. And we start off with Fiorentina taking on Panathinaikos, where a lot of people in my comments seem to suggest that Panathinaikos absolutely battered Fiorentina and probably should have won this game by more. Granted, I didn't watch the game, but I've watched the highlights and I've seen the stats. And the stats would seem to suggest to me that it was actually Fiorentina that had the better of the game. Certainly in terms of chances created, expected goals, and big chances both created and missed. So maybe the 3-2 scoreline is a bit of a full scoreline. I'm sure everyone in the comment section are going to let me know how wrong I was about that. What I can say is that Fiorentina's reserve keeper certainly gave Panathinaikos a big gift in that first leg. And it'll be very interesting to see if David De Gea plays in goal for the second leg following his man-of-the-match performance against Napoli at the weekend. Albeit they still lost to Napoli. But I think Fiorentina probably showed a little bit too much disrespect with their starting lineup against Panathinaikos in the first leg. And it'll be interesting to see what sort of lineup we see next time from them. What's really interesting is that both of these sides, when they played at the weekend, played different formations to the sides that they actually played in the first leg. I think Fiorentina, it's one way or the other. Either Fiorentina played a 3-back and then played a 4-back at the weekend, and then Panathinaikos played a 4-back, then played a 3-back. It's really, really weird how these two sides have approached their last couple of matches. But obviously, it'll be interesting to see if they match themselves up this time around. As we've just said, Fiorentina lost to Napoli at the weekend. Panathinaikos drew 1-1 with Atramitos, and that was only after a last-minute equaliser from Maksimovic, one of the goal scorers in the first leg. For me, this is going to be a really, really close one to call once again. The first leg was absolute chaos. Like I say, chances at both ends of the pitch, but from what I saw of the stats, Fiorentina just about edged it in terms of chances created. Now, in front of their home fans, I would expect this one to go along the same sort of lines. Chances at both ends, goals for both teams. And to be honest, I just want to see this one go all the way. And I think it has a really good chance of going all the way. So I'm actually going to go for the exact same scoreline as last week, but in reverse, which is a 3-2 win to Fiorentina. And then I am going to go for the Italian side to win it in extra time or penalties. But we'll see. Panathinaikos clearly played well in that first leg. Could they pull it off away in the second? Next up, it is Legia Warsaw taking on Molde. And at half-time, those Molde fans must be thinking, can we play you every single season? Because last year, Molde locked Legia Warsaw out of the Europa League. Either the Europa League or the Europa Conference League. But this time around, it was 3-0 to Molde at half-time. They played absolutely fantastically in that first half. However, they absolutely threw it away in the second half. You look at the goals that Legia scored in that second half, there is some incredibly complacent defending from those Molde players in the second half. And what it means is they've left the door open for a Legia comeback. 3-2 going back to Poland as things stand. But the good news for them is that they did have a rest this weekend, did Molde. No fixtures for them. Whereas Legia were involved in yet another chaotic match this weekend. They drew 3-3 in a game which did see 7 of their starters from the first leg play. So their usual team was basically deployed again, and they put themselves through another incredibly high-intensity 3-3 draw at the weekend. So there is definitely remit to say that Molde can, or definitely will be, the fresher team coming into this one. And with the lead, it could be enough. The other big news coming into this is Legia's top scorer in this competition, Lequinhas. I said he was going to be injured for the first leg, but come back for the second leg. I was wrong. He was fit enough to come off the bench in the first leg and even score their second goal in the comeback. But he then stupidly got himself booked with 1 minute left, meaning he is actually going to be suspended for this second leg. So it's going to be an interesting one. Final thing I will say, certainly in regards to how the game went last week. Even though Molde were 3-0 up and it got pulled back to 3-2, Legia actually had the way better on the stats in terms of, again, chances created, XG, big chances, this, that and the other. All the stats that would suggest that Legia should have won this match. So even with Lequinhas being out, with this now coming back to them back at home, given the fact that they did much better than Molde in the league phase, I actually think that Molde have shot themselves in the foot by giving Legia only a 1-goal deficit for this second leg. And unfortunately, I think that Legia are going to progress in 90 minutes here. I'm going for a 3-1 victory to Legia Warsaw. And then finally, it is seemingly the most resistant side in this competition, Vitoria taking on Real Betis, because I was convinced Real Betis would win that first leg. And when Betis went 1-0 up, I sort of chuckled to myself and went, excellent, I've got that right. Because I wasn't fully convinced. It sounds daft to say that. I was pretty confident Betis were going to beat Vitoria. And then when Betis went 1-0 up, I thought, good, I'm justified. Then Vitoria bit them back. Then Betis went 2-1 up. And then Vitoria bit them back. And you've got to give credit to them. They have played so well in this tournament so far. But I think Cedric Bakambu needs to take a long, hard look at himself, because he missed some big chances for Real Betis in that period between the 1-1 and the 2-2. And if he'd have been really on it last week, they would be taking a bigger lead back to this second leg. But, like I say, Vitoria are playing absolutely brilliantly at the moment. They're unbeaten in this competition across the entirety of this competition so far. They're also unbeaten in their last 7 matches in all competitions. Betis, to be fair, technically, unbeaten in their last 7 matches as well, because their only defeat in their last 7 was the 1-0 defeat to Ghent in the second leg of the last round in the playoffs, because they were already 3-0 up and basically changed their entire lineup. So I don't really count that as a proper loss when they didn't even need to even draw to progress. So Both sides on really good form once again. In terms of the actual match itself, there is actually only going to be one potential player missing, and that is Avila for Betis. Usually plays as a substitute anyway, so you wouldn't have expected him to start, but he picked up his third yellow card of the tournament in the first leg, so he is going to be suspended. Other than that, no fresh injury or suspension concerns for either side, so everything to play for in this second leg. Ultimately, nothing can separate these sides last week. They're both on really good unbeaten runs, so for me, I've got nothing to separate them this week either. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw in Portugal. And I'm going to go for Betis to steal it in extra time or penalties. So that's just the way I see it. It's going to be an interesting week. I've gone for a lot of games being very, very tight over the course of this Europa Conference League. As always, let me know all your thoughts down in the comment section below. Let me know anything you think I've missed as well. Thank you very much for watching all of these European videos once again this week. We'll be back for the Premier League predictions video on Friday morning before we head off to the international break. Thank you very much for watching once again. I'll see you very soon.